Well, this week marks the 70th anniversary of the landmark U.S. Supreme Court decision, Brown versus Board of Education. The 1954 case changed public education in America, declaring that separate was not equal and mandating desegregation. In Leesburg, Virginia, the fight for equality in schools began long before the Supreme Court decision. And Wendy Griffith brings us the story.
From 1941 until 1968, this building served as the only high school for black students in Loudoun County, Virginia. 88-year-old Jim Roberts remembers eating lunch in this gym, running down the court in many basketball games, and dancing at the Douglas High School prom.
Was it a fun experience coming to high school here?
Oh, yes, yeah. But I mean, you didn't want to miss school because you got to see friends and you made friends.
And you were on the basketball team.
You was on the basketball team, oh, yeah.
And you said you never missed a prom.
No, never missed a prom. I went to prom all the years.
As a student in the 1950s, Jim didn't see segregation as much of an issue.
How can you miss something if you've never experienced it? That's my take on it.
It was the way it was, right?
This is the way it was. With the kids, we all played together, everything together. The only thing we didn't go to the same church and didn't go to the same school.
Before high school, Jim attended what was known as the Training School for Blacks in Leesburg. The building, which still stands today, was considered unsafe and did not have indoor plumbing. While Jim may have been too young to see the injustice, his mother and many others worked behind the scenes, attempting to make things right. The real story of how Douglas High School came to be can be traced back to the parents and black activists who were determined that their sons and daughters would receive a good education, no matter the cost.
They wanted an accredited high school program, but the white government wouldn't give it to them. So they said, we don't have land for that. So they said, okay, so we're going to buy the land.
In 1938, the group formed the Countywide League, raising $4,000 to buy land for a high school. The county, however, wouldn't let them build on the land unless they owned it, and forced the league to sell them the land for only $1.
They had to give it to the school system for $1 if they were going to have the high school. After the high school was built, which it was, obviously, we're in it right now, there was no furniture. So the black community had to produce the furniture themselves. And that is emblematic of what was going on during the segregated era. So they were provided schools, but they were not equal.
Every day, Barbara passed a school that was beautifully done. It had just been built that was for only white students. And she was forced, living in then a segregated Virginia, to go to a segregated black high school, which required her, every time it rained, to bring an umbrella just to sit in class.
During his address at Regent University's commencement, Virginia Attorney General Jason Miyares recalled the story of Barbara Johns, who in 1951 saw the injustice of segregation and did something about it.
This 16-year-old girl got up at a student assembly, and said, if you're tired of this injustice, please leave school now and march with me to the superintendent's office to demand change.
That march led to a group of lawsuits against school districts in Virginia, Kansas, South Carolina, Delaware, and the District of Columbia, which became Brown versus Board of Education.
What you may not realize is over 75% of the plaintiffs in that case were actually those plaintiffs led by Barbara Johns. They were Virginians.
Brown versus Board of Education is one of those landmark Supreme Court decisions that really changed the history in our country forever and for the good. It's important for us to have an appreciation for what that case did for us. You know, I came along well after the schools were desegregated, and I think about what my experience would have been had I not had the opportunity to come to know certain friends that I had.
The justices ruled unanimously in the landmark 1954 Brown decision, and the following year they ruled unanimously again in a follow-up decision, instructing the states to begin desegregating with, quote, all deliberate speed. Still, Loudoun County held out until 1968. The county officially apologized to the black community in 2020 for not fighting school segregation. Today, the Douglas High School building houses other educational programs and serves as a museum to the original all-black high school. When giving walking tours of Douglas, Roberts says he's always asked the same question.
What was here before? What was here before? So this being here, this is a monument to the black community and to all of America, the struggles that we went through.
Roberts, who would join the Navy after high school and work at a number of jobs throughout his life, says that while we've come a long way in race relations, it's only faith in God that will see you through.
The thing that I think of when I read my Bible, and I see it through all the way through the Bible from Genesis, is the word truth. Truth will prevail. Regardless, it might take a while to do it, but the truth will prevail.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News, Leesburg, Virginia.
It's a look back at our history, and we have to recognize that wasn't that long ago. You can't push these stories away. The courage of Barbara Johns, here she is, a 16-year-old, and she says, let's make a difference. Let's stand up. Let's make a change. And she did. But that change is still coming to America. We still have a long way to go. And if you think Brown versus Board of Education solved the problem, or the Civil Rights Act of a decade later, if that solved the problem, well, please think again. We still need to stand up for truth and uphold this wonderful principle that in Christ there's neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male or female. We're all one, and those struggles continue. There's a federal courtroom right here in Norfolk, Virginia, for the Eastern District of Virginia, and there was a judge, Judge Kaufman. He ran for Congress in the 1950s. He was Republican. He really liked Eisenhower, and in return, Eisenhower really liked him and appointed him to the federal bench. He was the one that stood up to what was called massive resistance, that the Supreme Court could make these rulings, but then they couldn't enforce them. You see some of that in that story we just watched, but it was Judge Kaufman that stood up to it, that said, no, we can't have this. If we can't have separate from equal, we can't do that anymore. And he's the one that put it in place. And so he is memorialized. The federal court building is named the Kaufman Building because of him and his courage. His life was at risk. They had to have U.S. Marshals stationed outside his home for fear of his life. They had to look at his car every day to make sure there weren't bombs. He had to have guards with him all the time because he had the courage to stand up. Now, there is another place where we might be worried, and we ought to be worried. Have we desegregated our churches? You know, you look back at history, 11 o'clock on Sunday morning was the most segregated hour. These are the words of the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. If you worship in a church where you can look down the pew and you can't see somebody else of a different race, I would encourage you to please think again. I'm in a group that's called Unity Weekend. It's led by Bishop Derek Greer. It's trying to change that. And so if you want more information, just type in Unity Weekend. It's coming up in just a few weeks in June, where we celebrate this and we say, how can we come together as a people of God and have heaven right here on earth, where every nation, every tribe, every tongue can be represented in every congregation. I encourage you to do it. It's something for us to really pray for. The church should be leading the charge here, leading the charge against racism. And one of the best ways you can do it is worship together.